Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You are always most welcome. Well, today I decided to do a second After Telford show simply because the simple truth was the first one, some of you may have thought, well, this is a bit short for you. It's because my battery was running out and I was having to really crimp it up tight, that one. And I literally had a minute left when I finished the video before the battery died on the camera, so I sort of cheated you a little bit. So I thought I'd actually show you a few of the things that a couple of items that I bought. I bought some lovely brushes, which I won't sort of bore you with too much detail of. I got this from ABC Brushes, got the Pro Art set, just £6, absolutely fantastic. Really fine ones though, which I was actually needing. I've got plenty of fine brushes, but I do a lot of fine work with these figures, so I've been really going through them lately. And there we go, sorry, can't be focused there. So I've got a nice set of those. I got myself, as you've just seen, the Mitch's Military Models, the Sharki Ward figure. Yeah, Squadron Leader Ward there, which is a resin bust, absolutely amazing really. I'll just zoom you fully in because I don't think you were fully zoomed in before. So you can see the nth detail. It's a beautiful, and they do some astonishingly accurate stuff, these guys. So when you go for the Bridge Too Far range, for example, it's based on the actors. So you've got a perfect Sean Connery, an absolutely superb Edward Fox, and here we've got a real character, obviously Sharki Ward. And I think we can tell that that has been extremely well done, right down to the detail of his beard, which is incredibly accurate. And it comes with all the detail of his flying suit. He's got his life preserver there. The tube's missing, so that's a separate piece. The tube here for his oxygen mask, obviously. So just ignore that. That's just a piece that I haven't. It's in the bag elsewhere. But it's a lovely, lovely bit of sculpting, and yeah, I think it was £25. I think it was off the top of my head. Doesn't come in a box, and it comes in a bag, unfortunately. So I don't know whether it ever did come in a box, but one of those things that one of these days I'm going to put that in my Sea Harrier, and I think it will just complete the set. I think that would be really nice. Texture of his beard is quite remarkable how they've done that. But the shaping of his face is just dead on, isn't it? It's like a photograph. Amazing. Anyway, so that's Sharky. So I'll move him over there where he's safe. And a few other things that I wanted to run through there. Now, if you remember my montage of video footage of photographs at the end of the montage, there were 3 shots of the same model, which was kind of unusual in the context of the rest of it. And I want to tell you, there's a little story behind it, which one of you is going to have a real chuckle about. I know, well, sort of. So what it was, you may recall back in the spring, I reviewed this kit. It's the B-Max Lotus 99T, and it's in the Lotus. It's got the Lotus graphics on it in this particular case. It really should have Camel Lotus, because strangely, it is actually Monaco Grand Prix spec. The kit comes in the Monaco Grand Prix spec. The race it won 2 races actually, won in Detroit and Monaco, the 2 street races in that year, and its new active suspension, which was a revolution at the time, and you can see, I'll show you some details of that in a second, but anyway, the kit, which was not a cheap kit, it was almost £300, I think it's about £275 retail, and they were selling them, was it MPS? I can't remember the name of the company now, but there was a company at Telford selling them last year for a bargain. I think they were £170, and I so nearly bought this kit. I was just literally, should have bought that, it's fantastic. Well, let me tell you the story. There's a couple of other photos. Let me just zoom in. There's parts here which control this, controlling the sensors, and we've got here actuators and things for the active suspension. Quite a lot of extra gubbins that you wouldn't get on the standard car. And it was, you know, in Senna's hands, of course, it was absolutely dynamite, and he won 2 races when it was clearly probably the 3rd best car that year, behind the McLaren Tag Porsche, and of course the old conquering Williams Honda. Yeah, but here's the story from a modelling perspective, which will amuse a few of you. So the owner of that kit, who very kindly loaned it to me brand new, was Ian Nichols, and he's a good friend of the channel. He's lent us several kits now, some really lovely ones, including was it the Lotus and the Ferrari, I think it was. He had a whole set of them. Anyway, JPS Lotus, I mean. Anyway, he found me. I was actually at the Kotare stand. This is on Saturday morning, so I wasn't dressed like this. So it was actually quite sharp, eagle-eyed that he spotted me at all. And he said, Peter Oxley. I said, yes, I'm Ian Nichols. Oh, he had lovely to meet you. And he had a friend with him as well. Nice to meet them both. And it was quite amusing because he said, there's this gentleman, Graham Wood, from Sutton Coldfield. He's got this lovely Lotus 99T. Have you seen it? I said, no, I've not even got through there yet. He said, I've just spotted it. Oh, there are problems. And I said, what? Bad problems? He said, bad problems. Oh my God. And apparently this gentleman, who I subsequently spoke to the next day, actually, right at the end on Sunday afternoon about 4 o'clock. I spoke to this gentleman, he came over and he gave me a full download. And oh my God, this kit sounds like a real dog from what he told me. I mean, this sounds almost Kinetic Sea Harrier bad. Because he was sort of saying, now I know how you felt with the Sea Harrier. It was like that with this. And apparently, I think this is one of the reasons he displayed it the way he has, which always looks good in fairness. I mean, especially when you've got this super detail engine. I think it's got to be seen. But one of the drivers, I think, was the fact that he said that the body doesn't fit properly. He wasn't sure if it was warped or it was just a bad design, not fitting correctly with the top and the bottom. Then there were issues with the suspension, there were issues with the exhaust. You couldn't get them to go on, you had to put them on after it was already in situ in the car, which is really difficult. There were problems with the screws. Some of the screws were very poor quality, and he said that the actual recess, instead of being round holes, the actual holes were kind of almost a triangular shape for the screw to go into. In theory, it's to give it more purchase. The reality is it was stripping the screws. He had a hell of a time with this kit. And I said, oh, the air turned blue. And he said, oh, I'm not the type that does a lot of swearing. He said, I was very down though for quite a few weeks trying to sort this lot out. And he said, we had this conversation about the price, and he said it wasn't worth 120 quid. He said this can't hold a candle to something like the Meng or the Tamiya kits, because obviously the Meng did have an issue with the Meng, didn't we? Which I actually bought as a gift for my brother-in-law, and it was beautiful, that MP44. And there's several of those, by the way, including in the competition area, I think. But I just had I think we were just unlucky, and we got one that had a very warped floor and main body. But it was all sorted thanks to the importer sorted it for me, Kotare Models. Anyway, I'm digressing, but it wasn't like that, and that was only 150, 160 quid, which seemed a lot of money. Well, this was almost double, and the customer, the builder, said, not worth it. Sea Harrier bad, overpriced, absolute horror, bad instructions, and horrible bad fit all round. Just a fight from start to finish. He also complained about the steering, saying that the steering doesn't have a proper steering column, unlike the Meng or the Tamiya kits, where you've got a proper steering column that actually has rack and pinion and the wheels turn. No, these wheels don't turn. There's no steering system in there at all. It's just for show. Now, at that price, I'm sorry, but that is abysmal. And he honestly made it sound. He said to me, if you'd have built this, there'd have been a rival to the Sea Harrier rant, you know. Oh God, it's disappointing though, isn't it? You know, and I felt really sorry for him. Anyway, that's why there's 3 photos, because I think he did a fine job of it. I mean, if you hadn't told me that, I'd never have known. And it also reminds us again that the proof of the pudding's in the eating. It's all very well for some, you know, Johnny-come-lately model kit inbox reviewer like me coming along saying, oh, it's absolutely wonderful, look at it, oh, Lotus, blah, blah, blah. And then you get the glue and the nippers out, and you start, you know, craft knife, and you start putting this thing together, and you find out that nothing really fits. It's not just Kinetic, it's BMAX. And he said his final comment to me, which I thought was very damning. He said, oh, I'm off BMAX for life. He said, that was horrible. He said, they can't have done quality control, they can't have tested all the things that Kinetic suffered from, yeah, with the Sea Harrier FRS1. Okay, changing the subject slightly now, just going off still with Sea Harrier though. One of you, and I've forgotten your name, very nice young gentleman came up to me and said, oh, I really enjoyed your Sea Harrier rant. And I started laughing, you know. And he said, no. He said, it was brilliant. He said, I could not have done what I did without it. And I said, oh, what did you do? He said, well, I made them both. I made the GR3 and the FRS1. And he showed me some photographs. and he'd done a lovely job of it. And he said, but frankly, your rant, what was it, an hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half or something, ranting and screaming and frustration and going through the instructions showing everything that is wrong with that kit. And he said it was perfect. It was like a blueprint for me, like a map through a minefield, how to avoid all the explosions that are going to take you out. He said, and by literally going through your video, I said I watched it repeatedly, like a guide, almost like an instruction leaflet, a video instructions. And he said, of course, the GR3, which is what I've said myself many times, GR3 was not as bad. Much better instructions. And the plastic is better. You know, they even changed the plastic because they knew they got it wrong. But anyway, glad to be of service. Glad that my rants are not just entertainment. They are actual practical help to the modeller. And he said, yeah. He said, because everything, even the markings, he said, you knew what you were talking about. And he said, and you look at their instructions, you say, oh, this is impressive. Not knowing it's wrong, you know, telling you Rich Harrier's a witch, and they got it wrong in that as well. They got all sorts of confusion. But anyway, glad to be of service. Anyway, that's that. So that's a couple of footnotes I thought I should add, because I think people will enjoy that. And as I say, it just shows again, you know, I mean, that Sea Harrier, that FRS1, was one of the nicest looking kits ever in the box. And one of the, you know, in terms of what it looked like in the box versus the reality, it was, you couldn't have a greater contrast. And he agreed with me, and he said, I had to get... He actually scratch built his rocket pods, Matra SNEB rockets for the GR3, and they looked like resin ones. He'd done a beautiful job of it, I've got to say. I say scratch built, I think he 3D printed them, but they were fantastic. They looked very professional, so well done to you. And he was laughing, saying, yeah, you were right about, you know, those stupid rocket pods and other things they got wrong in there, you know. He said, but it's a shame, you know, that other modelers that have horrible experiences, if they all documented it like I did. I'm not trying to be a paragon of virtue, because I couldn't do it every time anyway. But I was so vexed about that kit, I sort of went to the nth degree in terms of documenting everything. And he said, it's a shame we can't have that. Think of the resource, you know. I mean, you get people like Phil Flory does it as well, of course. Although he always seems to give some of these manufacturers a bit more of a pass, a bit of a free ride, I think. That can be a bit less forgiving. But it's useful when you've got someone who's been through it and does walk you through step by step. I think we need more of that, you know. Not just these videos that, again, I sound a bit critical here, but not just videos that you get with a lot of these modelers on YouTube that just have this perfect model at the end and they've got a gleaming halo on. Look at how brilliantly I did it, where you don't see the warts and all, you don't see the pitfalls and what they had to go through, and that's really the most useful thing to watch of all. Otherwise, you just see a perfect sea. If I'd have done that and you just saw my perfect Sea Harrier at the end, I'd be saying, well, that's beautiful. Well, it's a lovely kit. I'm going to get me one of those. No, please don't. Anyway, speaking of Kinetic, please don't put yourself through that pain, is what I'm saying. Speaking of Kinetic, there's something I forgot to mention. They weren't at the show, and they were scheduled to be. They were scheduled to be in their normal place in Hall 3, which is the first hall you go in, just next to the top door that goes into the middle hall. No, your crew kern models were there, and they were supposed to share. They were at one end of that table, and Kinetic was supposed to be at the end that was near the entrance between the two halls, and they weren't present. I wonder what happened there. That seems odd, because they were clearly, it sounds like they were listed by IPMS as being present, and they just weren't there at all. So that was odd, I thought. I mean, I don't wish any ill on these people. I don't want to go bust or something to make better kits and put proper instructions in. No, it's not that hard, is it? Others can do it anyway. Let's not go back down that road. Some other things to talk about. I was offered when I was at the show to be immortalised in plastic forever by a company called, some of you will know these guys, but a company called Model U, who are based in Bristol, who will 3D scan you. They've got this thing that looked like, I was very nervous. I didn't like it. And I said to one of my friends I was with, I said, I don't like this. I said, it reminds me of Family Guy. It's like Stewie Griffin's Time Machine. I step in there, next thing you're going to know, I'm going to be in the middle of the Spanish Armada or something. I don't really want that, to be honest. And they said, no, you'll be fine. It'll do a really good reproduction of you. And I was like, ew, do we really want that? I said, I can't do it today anyway, because this was on Saturday I had the conversation. I said, I haven't got my usual jacket on. I haven't got my gloves on. People wouldn't recognise who the heck I was. Anyway, they were scanning. They had a chap there, one of their own guys, who puts different uniforms on, and he was wearing like a Battle of Britain RAF uniform, complete with his sou'wester life preserver and all his gear, proper RAF flyer's outfit, you know, pilot. And I'm going to zoom in on this because they are a very interesting company, and I saw the quality of what they've done. They've been around for a couple of years now, but they're definitely getting a lot better, you can tell. It's just the technology is getting better and their application of it's getting better. And they actually, you know, I could have had myself, and you could have yourself, immortalised in plastic. So have a look at this. Here's the leaflet that they gave me. And this is one of their guys who I was chatting to on the stand. Here we go. Sorry, I don't know his name. I did speak to him and he was very helpful. I was going to buy their product. I was going to put my money where my mouth was. But unfortunately, I wanted a Jaguar pilot. He said, look, in the case we've got Harrier pilots, Buccaneer pilots, I think it was, and Jaguar pilots standing. They're doing a seated one as well, but they're having some issues in getting the right, something to do with the ejector seat and the masks or something. But anyway, the belts. But they got them standard next to the aircraft and it looked really good. And I said, yes, I'll take one of those Jaguar pilots, please. Oh, bugger, we're all sold out. You could tell. I looked at the shelf and I thought, I bet there was a pin that was empty and I thought, I bet that's the Jaguar pilots. Because of the Airfix Jaguar, everybody's bought them and why not? And I said, you should have bought more stock. I suppose it's knowing how many to take is the problem. Anyway, back to the point. So here he is. We specialise in creating incredibly lifelike fine scale figures using the state-of-the-art 3D body scanning and 3D printing. And I can tell you, I bumped into Jen from Genesis Models. She's got a YouTube channel and build kits, and is ex-Royal Air Force, of course. Or is she still Royal Air Force? No, I think she's left the Air Force now. Anyway, she'd been scanned as well. She was ground crew, and they'd scanned her. One pose she was sort of bending over picking something up, I think, and in the other pose she was sort of waving off the aircraft to say it's all clear, sir. And in a outfit there was two figures actually, there's a man and her, and they're really good. It's spooky, you know. When you see these and you see they're even doing bespoke stuff here. If you look carefully, they will scan you with you and your wife. You can tell they look almost like a photograph, don't they? With your wife and your cat. And I could get Mrs. O and the cat. I'm not sure the cat's going to sit in the time machine for long though. Can't imagine that working too well. I don't know about you. They do groups, work scenarios where they could model a group of workers. You know, if you've got a corporate thing where perhaps a group are in some sort of competition or they get an award or something like that, you could then have them modelled. Custom crews. And look at that, you've got an entire family there. It's really clever what they've done. And they do it at different scales for you as well, because they were doing 48th and 35th. So just zoom back slightly to show you this leaflet, because it's definitely worth a nosy. So what they do, you have a scan in this TARDIS stroke time machine thing, scanning booth. And then the preview you scan and make sure there's no obvious errors. And they do a bit of editing if necessary. And then they can reprint it. And then they produce the figure. And then professional painting. Dan at Tunnel Lane Model Railways offers professional figure painting. If you've chosen painted figures, we can send your prints directly to Dan. Look at that. A bit professionally painted. And you want to send a photo or something as well. Or in my case, you can just look on YouTube. But this is how it works. So you sit, lady here, sitting in, musician with a guitar. She's sitting in the booth. And then she gets herself scanned. Discuss your ideas and preferences. Strike a pose. And then you just got to hold it. How long do you have to hold it? 3 seconds you've got to hold still. That's not too bad, is it? That's something like being at the dentist, isn't it? Well, that's not as bad as the dentist, is it? And then they scan you and then, well, you know it, it's 3D printed and you have got yourself immortalised in plastic by Model U. Isn't that good? Now, I would urge you to go and have a look on their website, because they've got they sort of started out, I think, mainly with railway figures, and I think they've realised that the market is much bigger than that, and it doesn't really mention railways there so much anyway. There is one. But they had a wide range of figures, because obviously they've got these sort of model type guys who pose in the authentic uniforms. And I suppose the biggest challenge for them is getting hold of the uniforms. They probably have to go to museums and things like that. But they've got a wide range of figures now. You know, you've got lots of RAF figures. I think you've got some Luftwaffe and American figures. Have a look on their website. It's definitely worth having a nosy on it. So it's www.modelu3d, model U, just the letter U, modelu3d.co.uk. There you go, I've given them a free plug. Okay, so moving on to other things. This is really aimed at a lot of you that weren't at the show. So you can see some of the things that we were able to pick up. Obviously, you'll have seen my preview photographs that I did in the montage of the new Airfix 109 G6, G5/6 I should say. The 24 scale kit, which is pretty impressive. All new tool, of course. And I'll tell you something interesting about toolings in a minute. But I've just been asked a question. Literally a few minutes before I started filming, somebody was asking me about this product, saying, is it true it's tooled in China? Well, I think that's been true with Airfix for some years now. The tooling itself is Chinese, and then it goes to India for the actual injection moulding. And this is in an Indian production kit, so obviously we've got fingers crossed that, based on what Dale was telling me, Dale Luckhurst, who's Airfix head of brand, frankly, that it should be okay, because they're really sitting. I can imagine they're really sitting and monitoring the quality control very closely on this, and it certainly looked absolutely amazing on the example I saw. And here we go. So this is just like a promo leaflet, but isn't it nice? You know, showing you all the different the 3D renders that they did, and then over here you've got the actual final model, and they had them obviously on the table at Telford. And I have to say, it was mighty impressive. In my mind, I was thinking it was probably the most impressive Airfix kit I've ever seen, really. So if the actual kits that come into our hands is as good as that, it's going to be something very, very special. These wonderful different options you've got. 5 different options on the back, including the G6 that's got the Erla, the sort of almost like a semi-bubble canopy. I shouldn't use the word bubble because it's not a bubble, but it's got less framing in it. The later one, 1944. Very tempted to do it if I was to build that. That'd be tempting, something a bit different. But I'll just give you the key features takeaway for this. Model can be built with or without the fully detailed engine. So you know that if you don't want to do the engine, you can leave it out. Bit of a shame though. I mean, there's no point in complaining about Kotare not providing engines and then not building the Airfix one, is there? You know what I mean? Anyway. Engine cowlings and oil cooler can be posed in the open or closed position. Choice of 2 types of cowling. Engine cowlings, MTT and Erla cowlings. Canopy can be posed open or closed, and there are 2 types of canopy included. Additional engine and cockpit parts for G5, the pressurised high altitude cockpit version. Optional 300 litre fuel tank and wing canal gondolas. So the fuel tank is the ventral tank under the centre, and the gondolas are the big cannons on slung under the wing. It was a 20 mil, wasn't it? I think I'm right in saying that. Yes, MG 151. Ailerons, elevator, rudder can all be offset to add real life-like features to the model. Radiator and wing flaps can be customised. Many optional parts to suit specific aircraft builds, such as the rudder pedals, gun sights. Rudder pedals. There was something about the rudder pedals, wasn't there, where they flip up. There's something about helping to help the pilot get out of his seat. Somebody mentioned this to me. What was saying about this? The pedals have got these like extender bars. They flick up as you're climbing out. Anyway, I think I've got that right. Rudder pedals, different gun sights. Saw that in the instructions. Trim wheels, instrument panels, undercarriage wheels, and tyres. 2 different types of tyres, and different windscreens. Detailed nose armament with machine guns, gun mounts, and ammunition boxes are included. Slide moulding was used to allow to capture fine details on the engine cowl, the fuselage, the exhaust, and the gun barrels. So you get like a muzzle, open muzzle, and open exhaust pipes. Cool. They look really good, the exhaust do, I tell you. Don't think they made the same mistake that they made with the Spitfire, where they're going to plonk the mould contact point right in the middle of the face. And it goes on to say, exclusive pre-cut masking sheet is included, contains masks for all exterior glazing and some paint marking options. Interior masks not included. Now Dale told me, I'm just thinking, what did Dale say about this? He said, we are going to include interior masks, but we're waiting for them. There was none in the kit. Or are they going to be optional? Perhaps I didn't quite pay attention enough. He definitely said they're doing an interior glass paint mask. I'm not sure if that would be optional or included in the kit. We'll find out. As soon as he's going to give me a copy of one, so we'll know once that arrives. 44-page colour instruction manual including detailed technical information, scheme histories and parts diagrams. Now I've got to say, the instructions in this kit are the best instructions in any Airfix kit I've ever seen, and he's right up there in my opinion, as good as if not better than the likes of Wingnut Wings, Kotare, Zukimura. Quite Zukimura-like in places, without all the Japanese writing. It really goes into fantastic detail explaining the components of the engine. Now this is exactly what people want, and I was really pleased to see this. I thought, well, you have been listening, you know. I know I accused them a year or two ago of not listening to the customers. Well, they clearly have now, because they really have given us all you could want in that respect. And you could see that they've got a breakdown explaining the guns and all the components of the guns, components of the engine. Absolutely brilliant, 10 out of 10, you know. And then just a little tiny negative at the end. 3 A3 glossy colour painting and decal guide sheets are included. Now decals, there are no swastikas. Now I'm just going to say this once on this occasion and then just move on. I had a chat with Dale about it. He still didn't give me any clarity. They don't seem able to specifically say how that their competitors can provide a swastika in a way which is not offensive, not obvious, but still enables you to build the whole thing straight out of the box. Now we've got these wonderful masks. Everything is, the kit apart from this one thing is just buildable straight out of the box and give you an amazing result. But it's not realistic if it doesn't have the proper original markings. It doesn't mean we're celebrating that regime, but we need to have it as history. It's a historic item and it needs to be that way. I don't think that, as time goes on, people are going to be happy with this. Because he said all the things that I already know, which is, we can't send to Germany yet, I know that. But ICM and Kotare, Tamiya, who's the other one? Meng, Border, they're all doing it. They're doing it in ways which are cunning and not in your face. I understand they don't want to put it on the box art. I don't really agree with that either, but I understand it. I understand that they're not going to put it on the box art, but inside that box you should be able to build the kit to its realistic final completion without having to go to aftermarket. And I think they're just saying you can get aftermarket, it's just a total cop out. So it doesn't annoy me. I'm not alone in this at all. I think that probably most modelers agree with me. Probably most. I suspect 75%. Anyway, we'll move on. But apart from that, I've got to say, I'll give credit where it's due, this product, from what I saw, was amazing. And significantly from a technical perspective, it gave you more data, it gave you every bit of info I think you need. And it delivered, from a technical perspective, a quality that is a definite big evolution for Airfix, and a huge leap forward from the Stalwart, or even from the Spitfire, which was a nice kit actually, but just had one or two little glitches in it, and I don't think this suffers from those. So it's definitely worth, and you can. They were saying that it's pre-order at $89.99. I mean, wow. And that's the same price as the Kotare kit. That's a smaller scale with no engine. Now, yeah, there are things about Kotare that I definitely like. We'll talk about them in a second. But the value of that 109, I know it's a 109. Yes, I think it's a little bit dull as a choice, but we all understand it's an economic choice, a commercial choice, I should say. I think it's great value. You cannot argue with the value. Remember what I was saying a couple of weeks ago about the Italeri Tornado, 135 quid. Wasn't worth £135. Just wasn't. This is worth £90. Definitely. Anyway, there you go. Sorry, one tiny complaint which I didn't mention before, or today I'll even think about really. I'm just a bit sad that there's no figure. I think they should do it as a separate item, an aftermarket one that you could perhaps use in a 190 or a 109. Yeah. I bet they could produce a figure. I know that they're not into figures at the moment. This is something else that maybe you can think about for the future Airfix. If they could develop their thinking a little bit more, if they could now apply the sort of quality we're seeing here and just produce a figure for a late Luftwaffe figure, a 190, 109 and maybe a 262. They haven't got a kit though, have they? But it's a shame not to have any figure with it, and again you've got to go aftermarket. Anyway, there we go. But I have to say I was mighty impressed by that. After the underwhelming Stalwart, which really let us down on a number of fronts. I think most of those problems, many of them, not most of them, have been fixed, but it did not, excite people. This is different. This is very exciting. It's not just that it's big, that's irrelevant really. It's the attention to detail that's gone into that. Designed by Matt Whiting, so I wasn't surprised really. He normally designs knockout kits. In fact, the only Airfix kit in recent memory that's got in the top 3 kits of the year was one of his designs, so there you go. Anyway, moving on. So now, Kotare. Kotare. I think that's the correct pronunciation. People keep arguing about this, and I felt like saying to them, listen, they're correcting people about the pronunciation. Why don't you just come up with a name that we can all pronounce? Anyway, we won't hold that against them either. Let's have a look at them then. So a couple of things we should definitely see. Look at this. Their first American fighter is coming. And it's going to be the P-47D, the Razorback. One of my favourite, the Jug. One of my favourite fighters of World War II, if I'm honest. I kind of like it, secretly kind of like it more than the Mustang, even though I like the Mustang too. We've got that on the back. We've got the Hurricane, which we'll talk about in a second. Let's talk about this one, because this was big news that nobody saw coming. So there's a little bit of a write-up here, which I'll just give you a little bit of an idea on. So it says the massive Republic P-47 was second only to the P-51 in importance for the USAAF war effort in World War II. In terms of fighters, obviously. Esteemed CAD artist Jason McAdam, formerly of Wingnut Wings, has come back to kit designing after 5 years of honing his skills in the engineering industry. He's relishing the opportunity to get back to designing aeroplanes and has absolutely thrown himself into the P-47 design. The kit set will be created according to our usual principles of accuracy, ease of build and scale surface detail. But no engine, I presume. In fact, surface detail is going to be a big part of this design. As many P-47s flew in natural metal finish, we are working with our moulding partners to create the impression of rivets without resorting to simple holes in the surface of the plastic. This kit set will be available in July 2027. Oh, so July 27. The tagline is 072747. Okay, anyway, it's got some illustrations there, and it shows it what a beast it is and how the design is going. Gives you a bit of a hint about what it's all about. Look at it in comparison to the Spitfire Mark 5A. Makes you realise how much bigger the P-47 is. Look at that. What a beast, eh? Okay, so that's that one. Some ideas here of the design work that's going on. And then on the rear, we're going to talk about the Hurricane. Now, I should also mention to you, I've got to be honest, I didn't get a chance to have, the one thing I didn't get done at Telford was I never got to have this conversation with them about the Halifax and about this sort of thing about when you've got to pre-order it and prepay for it. Was it 250 quid or something? I can't remember the figure. It's a little bit strange. Not entirely comfortable with it personally. Anyway, I never got into that with them, in fairness. Celebrity. Never quite got into it with them. They were very busy and I was rushing off to see Airfix. I was very short of time at the time. But I did have a chat with them about other things, including the Mark V Spitfire, just wondering which one it is now. This is so small I can barely read it. Did I do with my glasses, by the way? I seem to have misplaced my glasses. Yeah, the one that's in the American markings, it's the 5A, isn't it? The Spitfire has given them a lot of problems in tooling. Apparently, this is with their normal tooling company, normal injection moulder setup, and they were telling me that I'm not going to name any names here. And what I tell you now, he warned me that I'll deny this if you ever quote it. He said, "I don't mind you quoting it, but if anybody comes back and thinks any of this stuff is a commitment, we will deny it. So you'll have to just take my word for it." You saw the chap on the stand from my photographs, but he said they've had many problems. I think he said there'd been 20 issues with the tooling on this American Mark V, and it'd been back and forth to the tools and back and forth, and this is why it's running behind schedule. And I think it's basically the wings and the wing blisters for the cannons, and they can't get the shape right, the profile right, the size. They've had all manner of issues, and this is making it the most delayed kit they've probably had. Confident they get it right. He said, but we have gone to a brand new injection moulder in the meantime for the new Hurricane. And the new Hurricane and the P47 and I think the MA109E, which we'll talk about in a second, they are going to be from this new supplier. He said, now it's not that they're better as quality or anything like that. He said, but what we've found with this new company we've been talking to is they are very clever, very innovative in the way that they mount the design. They apply the way they evolve the design of what they want to tool onto the sprue. And so he said they have very clever ideas about where to position the contact points, and they instead of just slapping them down, that'll do that. He said they think which part would best be the one opposite that one, and how would they interact best on the sprue and least impact each other in terms of the final effect it has to the modeler. So I talked about Airfix before and the Spitfire with its issues with those contact points on the exhaust, things like that. He said, and this new company, he said, there's nothing that you can't separate them on quality. He said, but they are definitely head and shoulders above when it comes to lateral thinking and creativity and being very sort of opportunistic and creating good ideas and coming up with clever solutions finders. So he said that they are very pleased with this company. So the Hurricane is going to be with them. Let's have a look at the Hurricane. So this is the Kotare 132 Hurricane, the Mark 1 early. So this is going to have the fabric wings section. I think it has both actually, doesn't it? I'll get into that in a second. Some photographs here where you can actually see that. You can actually see that fabric section on the wing. A very fine looking model this, and definitely needed. As I've been saying with sort of talking about Airfix and others, we needed a 109E and we needed a Hurricane Mark 1. A premium 21st century moulding and tooling, and here it comes. So they say Kotare Models CAD artist Darren Mildenhall has produced a tour de force with the K32015 Kotare 132nd Hurricane Mark 1 early kit set. His experience in creating fabric wing surfaces for wingnut wings has been fully expressed in this amazing design, capturing the subtleties of the different rib and stringer types that give the fabric wing and fuselage their unique shape and details. Our partner company in China, who also produced the 109K4, is working hard to, this is the new one, is working hard to create this mould right now and are optimistic they can capture the design in the metal. It is a more intricate kit than the Spitfire or the 109. The extra parts demanded by the more complex 1930 style Hawker cockpit make it more of a challenge. However, it should still be easy to build for the modeler. Options will include a pre-war machine, a Battle of France aircraft and a Battle of Britain Hurricane that was still destroying the German bombers well into October 1940. We'll be shipping this kit in 2026, but we are being cautious with our predictions given the vagaries of international trade and the technical challenges facing the mould designers. Now, what does that mean? You heard it here first, okay? So yeah, this is when he said, if you quote me this, I will deny it. But I can tell you, he said to me, we are officially saying that the Hurricane will be out by Telford of next year. But he said, I believe that it will actually be out more like springtime, probably around Easter. If all goes well, that's a major problem. He said that things are looking quite optimistic, even since they printed that leaflet. He said I would certainly hope to see it before the summer. That's good news. Now that's that, and then the other one is, and this is one that really excited me the most, I think. Announcing the next Kotare models, the Battle of Britain fighter, Messerschmitt Bf-109E4. Yes. And a lovely picture of it, which I'll show you. So I was delighted when I walked up to their stand and saw that, and I thought, yes. My only question, which I didn't actually ask because I was a bit pushed for time, I didn't want to be rude. I just felt like saying, why didn't you do this one first? You'd have sold bolt loads of these instead of the K4. But anyway, K4 was lovely, but I think this makes a lot more commercial sense for them, to be honest. So, you can see there we've got a beautiful little mill, and we've got a really nice cockpit coming up. All the usual nice things. Sadly with no engine. Now I never got, I say, you can tell me off if you want. The one thing that I failed my viewers on at Telford was on Kotare stand, which was one of the very first I went to, in fact, probably the first. But I was so under time pressure and it was so busy. I really wanted to have a chat with them and say, look, why no engines? You know, when are you going to change that? Because you know, a really beautiful Daimler-Benz engine. Of course, they can't do it for the same price, but if that was still £110, I think people would pay if it had a beautiful engine in it. I do. And it just gives them, those people that don't like them a stick to beat them with, and it's a strange thing. It's a strange thing. Of course, the aftermarket guys will be leaping on this, and there'll be aftermarket Daimler-Benz engines coming out right left and centre, I'm sure. But it just, I mean, it makes for a quick build, and this is a kit I might well build, this 109E and the Hurricane actually, because I could make like most of you can make a Battle of Britain set, you know. Anyway, they go on to say, the 109E was the Luftwaffe's premier fighter in the first part of the war, presenting a huge challenge to the Royal Air Force in the Battle of Britain. Highly regarded Luftwaffe expert Radu Brinzan, who designed the well-received 109K4, has done a fabulous job with this model. The design is partly based on the LiDAR scheme of the example at the RAF Museum. Now when he says the RAF Museum, is he meaning Duxford or Hendon? Because they don't make that clear. Because there are two. Well, you can argue there's three with Cosford, couldn't you? But anyway. I think it's the one... Is it Hendon? See, I've not been to Hendon, so I'm a little bit... I have a slight hole in my knowledge. Some of you will probably know the answer. We know there's one at Duxford. There's the two. I think it may be Hendon. Anyway, he goes on to say, the CAD data is complete. We will now go through a brief period of public feedback in which everybody's welcome to contribute. We'll also have some subject matter to go through the design with a fine-tooth comb. Subject matter experts, big pun. We expect this to be in Q3 to Q4 2026. So I think that by Telford, around Telford next year, they'll certainly have them on the stand. And that could be the ultimate Christmas present for Christmas 26. On the back, it's got like a general leaflet info, and it's from Mark Robson, who's the owner of Kotare Models. Talking about why this new direction, the Halifax. This kit will only be available direct from Kotare. It will not appear in shops unless somebody decides to buy direct from us at the full price and then put it in their shop. Why this new direction? He says markets are being difficult to access for various reasons. The world of retail commerce is changing. The standard model has been has been that a manufacturer supplies a product to a distributor and then supplies to the retailer, who then sells on to the final customer. This paradigm has shifted over the years, and there is far more direct selling from manufacturers. We see that with Airfix, don't we? Also, many distributors around the world are also retailers. Well, I suppose you could say that's people like Tiger Hobbies, couldn't you? Basically, we as a company need to have some product lines that return a higher level of margin, fair enough, than the standard kit sets do when sold at wholesale prices to distributors. This is especially true when we're considering commercially risky subjects like the Halifax, he says. Well, that tells you it's kind of a bit too honest, isn't it? That's exactly what I would have said. In fact, I did say that already in my previous one of my previous videos. We are actively planning to start companies in the UK and the USA to solve some of these issues with tariffs and shipping costs that are currently hampering our sales. Rest assured that every dollar of income for Kotare so far has gone straight back into the company to fund new designs and hire new designers, as you can probably tell. Hopefully it will pay me an income sooner or later. Dear, it sounds like Wing the Wings. Hopefully it will pay me an income sooner or later, but getting kits on the market is now our number one priority. So it's not a profit-making company yet. So he's telling us too much in some respects. I do respect him for being honest though and transparent. You know, it makes you want to support him. And he goes on to say, pre-ordering our kits on any of the subjects currently available on the website. All I would say to you, Mark Robson, is really this: I've had one or two of these kits come through to me direct, and I think your packaging is I know I moaned about this elsewhere, but I think the packaging is a little bit underwhelming considering it's coming all the way from New Zealand. I think a little bit more packaging, just a little bit more beefiness in the packaging would be better. Because we did have one that arrived not damaged, but the outer was bashed, and it made me very nervous. Anyway, you don't want that happening when you're Halifax, do you? Do you know what I mean? There we go. So very interesting and a very refreshingly transparent and honest sounding few statements from them. Still feel a bit nervous about committing £250, £300 to Halifax. That when he admits it's commercially risky and and he's not making any money, and maybe it's a bit too much information. Anyway, we move on. I'm very pleased that Kotare have got this Hurricane and this Messerschmitt. I think those are going to sell like hotcakes, those two kits. I think those are going to could be their biggest sellers since the Spitfire, if not bigger, but we'll see. Then we got, this was included with your pack when you walked in at Telford, the Wing Leader Battle of Britain Special Edition. Oh, this has got to be had, hasn't it? Especially if you're a fan of the kits I've just mentioned. Free Telford edition. And it's got some wonderful photographs, lots of references about Heinkel 111s, Dornier 117. Dornier falling onto Victoria Station, having lost its tail. Famous photograph. And lots of anecdotal stories. The narrow margin. Yes. That's Keith Over, isn't it? Yes. Battle over Britain. I think that's the original book I read, Battle over Britain. And it's got all their books that you can get. ME109E versus Spitfire Mark 1. Here we go. Which was best? A big discussion about it. Fantastic this is. I was really pleased to get this. For nothing, Yeah, Wing Leader have done a great job with this, to be honest. Oh, in colour as well. Certainly half it's in colour. Dog escapes blazing bomber. Good lord. Family's pet dog was caught in the inferno. Managed to escape. Wow. This is something you don't want to have in the headlines. I shot down a Hurricane, confesses RAF Spitfire pilot. Oh! Famous story. Really good. Really good. ME109 versus BF109. Which is correct? Whenever we release a film on YouTube, somebody says it's an ME109, and then other people say, no, it's a BF109. And the BF109 prototype. They're saying it's a BF109, basically. That seems to be. I don't care who you are. This is Willie Meshes. I don't care who you are. Mention BF once more and you're leaving through that window. Mein Führer. Oops. So, it says that during the Battle of Britain it was normally referred to as an ME-109. However, William Messerschmitt hadn't reckoned upon a couple of know-it-all authors in the 1960s who started to dig back into the records that day and saying that technically it should be referred to as a BF. Of course, this knowledge was soon used by a legion of enthusiasts that appeared to appear clever at their local plastic modelling society club meets. And the myth has grown and grown. Oh. Here we go, finally. The Air Pictorial magazine in October 1962 wrote to Willy Messerschmitt on the 10th of October asking his opinion. His reply was blunt. The name of the aircraft is ME-109. There you go, that's from the man himself. So don't say BF again, mein Führer, as he was saying. And there's a quiz on the back. That's excellent. That's the best thing I got at the show. It cost me nothing. This did cost me some money, but quite rightly so. Spencer Pollard's wonderful book on the Jaguar, how to build it and how to get the most out of your Airfix kit, which I literally haven't opened this yet, so I'm going to let you share in the joy, if I can find out how you get in, because he's done a fine job of the packaging, too fine. It's a resealable bag that doesn't want to be opened. He had other books as well, not just on this one, including his Century Jets and maybe the Tomcat book was there. And he's also done one on the Telford Panavia Tornado. But it's a lovely book. Look at this. I'll zoom you in. One of Britain's greatest modellers, in my view, for sure. And I think that's going to become apparent when you see this. To Saddam of yours. Okay. And he gives the intro, showing all the famous Jags on the Airfix 1970 kit. Then the Matchbox one from 73, which was, by the way, both inaccurate kits in different ways. Airfix has got the French fuselage, and the Matchbox one's got the French weapons. It's got all the French weapons all wrong. And then a bit more accurate later on, we've got the Hasegawa and, of course, Italy's later one. Recent years. And you know, I'm glad I bought this because I just thought, I know it's 20 quid, it was £20, worth every penny. Spencer's initial thoughts, looking at the sprues. These are the marking options that come in the kit. The Lossiemouth one, of course, the Mark 1. It was only at Lossiemouth for 3 months. So they moved them off all to Coltishall soon afterwards. Gulf scheme. This is quite hard to show you. This is a bit floppy. And then starting the build. Things to watch out for. What are the tools you really need to build this kit? And then practical step-by-step build. Things to watch out for. Using the jig. This is the thing that makes me nervous. Using the jig to cut off the nose. Yeah. Now, I fancy this Mark 1, I do, so I'm going to have to do it, aren't I? Cut the nose off, sadly. And Spencer is clearly doing that. Has he actually cut it off, or is he just pretending? Come on, Spence. Don't let me down. Did you cut it off? It sort of jumps ahead as though he's going to, and then... Yeah, I'm not sure he actually did that, does he say? Depends which one he went for. He's gone for, I think he's gone for the Gulf War, so I don't think he did. Then you got some wonderful in-cockpit shots showing the interior of the pilot's office. A little bit of aftermarket scratch building, I should say, of which he is quite a genius wizard. He's got his Tamiya XF range out here, which is no bad thing. I use those myself. Rocket, what's he got? Rocket glue, cockpit painting. What's he used here? Cure adhesive sets in 1 to 3 seconds. Jeez. What's that? Deluxe materials, rocket UV resin, sorry, okay. So it's fast drying resin. Sounds quite cool. Might have to get some of that. And then he just goes through with some brilliantly insightful tips and hints about dry brushing and how to paint up all the interior of your cockpit. Lovely photograph there. I think that's at Cosford. And then the various ways to get the most out of your finishes, preparing the surface, get rid of your seams. What's he doing here? Uh-huh. He's taking advice from his friend Drew Manton here. Creating something simple that can be seen through the VIED. Could be it's a typo. Sorry, Spence. I thought it was something I've not heard of. VIED, it should say viewed, I think. Sorry. Viewed through the glass, if you look more closely. So it's like a LRMTS laser guide, laser finder. And you're creating your own. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? And then talk about the different camouflage schemes. Gulf War, of course, in his case. Operation Granby. And then he's gone how to build up the finish, highlighting, post shading, bit of everything really. Oh yeah, it's turning into a real beauty. Look at that. Oh yes, very nice. Great work as usual. Oh, look at that. By the way, just a quick thought. One thing I did see at Telford but didn't get my hands on properly was the Into the Armour. They do the guys in Ukraine that do the resin aftermarket. They had a set for the nozzles for the Jag, the engine nozzles, which look really nice. He's got Spencer is doing the lead wiring here for the brake lines, weapons. These abusive comments and messages to Saddam. Chapter 9, he's doing the finishing now, onto the weathering. You can fill your boots, can't you, with these? But again, the thing I like about Spencer Pollard's work is he weathers it so, how can I put it? Truthfully, it always looks like a real aircraft and it's not over the top. I have to say, so many modelers just go way, way over the top. And I did see examples, I'm not going to name it, it wouldn't be fair, but I saw some examples at the weekend at Telford where they were just so overdone. Find the pictures of the real things here. That's a great book, isn't it? Oh, superb work. Thanks a lot, Spencer. Worth £20 that any day. But yeah, there were one or two examples where the weathering is just so overdone. An aircraft just wouldn't look that completely extreme. And parts of the aircraft that were over-weathered were not necessarily, something you'd ever see, really. And you look at Spencer's, and that really looks realistic. Yes, there's weathering, but it doesn't look like it's been. I mean, there was a tornado. I won't say which one again, but there was a tornado that was so overdone. It was like it was almost black. It's just crazy. Yes, you get parts that are, heavily stained or burn marks and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's not an exercise in seeing how much weathering you can do. It's trying to make it look like the real thing, like he's achieved here. And that is, I look at that and I think, yes, that looks absolutely spot on. It's not bleached white, and it's not burned black, which is what people seem to go to these extremes of, less is more with weathering, I find. It needs some, you want to take any toy-like appearance out of models completely. With washes and with a bit of highlighting and with a bit of a post shading, but the emphasis on the little bit, that is absolutely critical. Anyway, enough from me today. That's kind of rounded up the bits I wanted to tell you about that I hadn't said before. We've got the Masters of the Air Waste, B17 Waste, going to review to come in the not too distant future, loaned by our good friend Lee. And we've also got lots of other new kits that are coming out from ICM, including that wonderful Hamden. Now, somebody said, oh, he didn't say much about the Hamden. It wasn't perhaps presented in the best way, that Hamden, but I can tell you that the kit was just epic. And I thought, no, I'm not going to say too much about this and bore people. We'll wait until I've got it in my hand, which will be very soon. I think you're going to be blown away by it. I think the finesse of the finish is eyebrow-raising, staggering, really. It's almost like they've gone to another new level of quality finish. We've seen how their clear parts are quite mesmerising, and that's what you're going to see here with the sort of riveting detail on the Hamden. It's going to be an absolute knockout kit. It's got to be in the top 5 in kits of the year, I can tell you that for sure, without even having it arrive yet. It's just guaranteed. But then there's a lot of competition here this year, and it's all come quite late in the year, including that Tomcat from Tamiya, which has got the most exquisite details as well. You know, a 70-second scale Tomcat, and you look at that, things like the pilots. You look at the crew, and you're thinking they look like a scaled down 30-second scale figure. They had nuances and detail on them at 70-second scale that I'm not used to. And unlike the Airfix kit, it does have a pilot, you know. So it's when I come to kits of the year. So we were chatting about this with one of my friends, I think it was Stuart, the other day, and we were talking about it, saying it's going to be really difficult this year because I'm confronted with probably 5 or 6 which could win kit of the year. In another year, would win it hands down. Had it been last year or the year before, several of these kits could have won, no problem at all. But this year, it's going to be very hard to decide which one doesn't win, you know, which one does win. It's going to be really hard to it'll just have to come down to personal preference, possibly, which I don't really like, because it feels like some sort of personal bias in a way, and I don't want to do that. But there's such competent kits have come out this year, although there hasn't been a great year until the very end, and it's this last minute rush where we've got a whole load of stuff coming through. You know, so some of the favourites to my eye are that Hamden, we've got the Tomcat, we've got Airfix's new 109, and there was the Jaguar from them as well. Don't think the Stalwart's going to get in the top 10, to be honest. No, it isn't. But, you know, we had the Black Box IBG, Black Box Spitfire. That was amazing. And the K4 from Kotare, the Messerschmitt 109. So many really staggering high quality kits, really. It's going to be a bit of a head scratcher, a bit of a headache, I think, to be honest. And I was saying, can I award 3 kits kit of the year? Well, you can't, can you? So I think that we'll end up with it so close that people will argue with me, whatever I come. And I haven't made my mind up. I have not. I've made my mind up, so don't worry. It's not a fait accompli at all. But whichever way I go, whichever I end up deciding on, I think it's so close this year, you'll be able to legitimately argue, well, I think it should have been B or C or D, and make a case. You know, I think it's. But these are good problems to have, first world problems, because it means that the quality has jumped again. I think we've had a jump in manufacturing quality, which is brilliant to see, and that's what we all want at the end of the day. Anyway, preempting all that, who knows what's going to impress or depress me. I will, whatever sample comes through from whatever manufacturer will be the one that is judged. I can only judge what is put in front of me, so I hope there are no quality glitches, and we'll take it from there really and see what we come up with. But you know, we've only got another month and a bit before I have to start shooting that video, and it's going to be very interesting to see really what my own opinion is, and I don't know. I wouldn't want to bet either way at the moment. Genuinely, I don't know in my mind which is likely to win. I think I have a short list, but which one comes out on top? Toss a coin, you know. I don't know. Anyway, I suppose that's what I would say to anybody manufacturers that don't win in the end. I wouldn't I wouldn't feel insulted by it, because I think the standard's so high that it could go either way. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Thank you very much for watching. Please give us a like, give us a thumbs up. Hope you enjoyed today's show and thought it was entertaining. Nice to see a few new things. For those of you that weren't there, didn't see these things, I think that's probably quite an eye-opener for you. Especially things like the Kotare and Spencer's Jaguar book. You can still buy those from Spencer. He's on his website, I think it's thekitbox.org, if I remember correctly. If you look him up on Facebook, you find him. I kind of wish it wasn't quite so floppy, but apart from that, that is a brilliant piece of literature if you've got a Jaguar and you want to build it. Absolutely knockout. And those are the kind of books we want more of. So there you go. Anyway, until next time. I should have said at the beginning, a bit late now, but I should have said I've got my slightly racist shirt on, so if the very easily offended amongst you are watching, turn away now, it's too late now. Anyway, it's my Alexandra Palace slightly racy dart girls shirt today, which I forgot I'd got on actually. I just noticed I looked at the sleeve and I thought, oh, oops, okay. Anyway, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves, stay well, stay safe. Thanks a lot, and bye for now.